Welcome back to the Brother Show. I'm your host, Kmo. This evening, we're having a continued conversation around Men's Health Awareness Month, and I have a very special guest on who's going to be talking to me a little about some of the things that he does to bring awareness to health. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Brother Show. I'm your host, Kmo. I'm your podcaster. I'm your life coach and relationship coach. And tonight we're actually having a conversation around Men's Health Awareness Month. And so I had this same kind of series a couple of days ago with one of my brothers actually, and we had a conversation around what we do to make sure that we are in a good space, health-wise, physically, mentally, in those spaces. And a lot of times we don't get a chance to have those conversations out loud and and make sure that we bring more awareness to it. So this is the reason why we're having these talks. And so tonight I'm going to bring on a good friend of mine, let him introduce himself. But Mr. JCam, please come on. How's it going?
How's it going? What's going on, Corey?
Nothing much, man. Thanks so much for making the time to have this conversation with you.
Thanks for having me.
We always have conversation around just how your mental is, and I know it's so important. We both have platforms where we try to have we have conversations offline all the time, but we try to have these platforms to bring more awareness to it and to let other men know and other people know that men do have feelings. We do have, we have things that we need to do within our in our own spaces, but we also need to take care of ourselves. So that's why, we draw closer to one another, because we like to have those conversations. And a lot of men for some reason kind of stray away from them, because, we were kind of brought up to say, just suck it up and keep it moving. Yeah. But please introduce yourself and tell folks who you are.
For sure. My name is Jason Campbell. I am the CEO of Brand B Sports. I also have a yoga practice called Axon Yoga, where we focus on, mental health, developing healthy mantras and habits. And, I'm just really happy to be on your program again. I think some of the most important things that fall by the wayside is us having conversations around our health, as well as mental health, and just physical and emotional being, I think, is so important. So thank you for broaching this topic and this conversation, man. It's very well needed.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So kind of what we just talked about, our relationship, and I think we've known each other for 20 years now, and the some of the most lowest moments in my life, I can remember me not even saying anything to you about it, but you kind of identifying that. And so this is 10 years ago, and us having those conversations and me not knowing I needed that. And I think me really looking back at those times and understanding, like, wow, man, you were way past your vision of life and what you would see in certain people to even really give some support to men and other guys along the way. So that's kind of, I feel like, not just us going to school with each other, but also in those moments as becoming young men, trying to understand this thing called life. And a lot of times, we talk a lot about relationships. We talk a lot about our practice. We talked a lot about, professional lives, but, we also need someone to kind of coach us through, help us through, support us through those times.
Peer coaching, absolutely. Peer mentoring.
Moving past them. And so I think we've done that. I'm not sure if you've had those moments in your life when you can remember when I did them for you as well, or push you through it. But let's talk about our relationship.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think our relationship is predicated on really the night we met and was told that iron sharpens iron, and we've been on that wave and on that vibe, for 21 years.
Right.
So, that's just really important, man. We are able to have very intimate, dynamic,
Mhm.
vulnerable, transparent conversations with each other, which makes it very powerful.
Mhm.
And I try to really instill that in the young people, both men and women that I mentor, but particularly the young men, because as you mentioned in your intro, we've been taught, particularly our generation, been taught to
Mhm.
just suck it up, don't have any feelings, don't
Mhm.
amplify, don't talk about your feelings. And as we've grown older to the age we are now, we just realize that that's not a healthy way to move
Mhm.
through life if you want to have
Mhm.
longevity, if you want to live
Right.
to 90, 94 years old.
Mhm.
So it's really about understanding your emotions, understanding the triggers, being aware of what triggers your emotions, and
Mhm.
then having healthy ways to pivot out of impulsive behavior, which is brought on by those emotions, and things like that. So that's so important, brother. And our relationship has grown over the years, and you've got my backside and vice versa.
Mhm.
And I really appreciate it, because we really have to have those people in our lives, no matter where we are as far
Mhm.
as success and things like that, that we can really hold us accountable in what we're trying to do and what we say we want to do. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate the relationship we have, and I love you, brother.
Yeah, vice versa, man. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about tonight. We're talking about men, men's health. We
Hmm.
do that anyway with mental health, but and we'll talk a little bit about that. But tonight I want to talk about like men's health awareness month and what that
Sure.
really is. And so I'll go off and kind of like talk about, tell my story. I did the other night, but I'm going to do
Hmm.
it this as well. And so for those that don't know, my platform is the Brother to Brother Show, the podcast, but it's also about um, relationship coaching, and then coaching men through certain things with our mental health. And so in this space, we try to do a really good job of not just talking about relationships, but also talking about relationships with ourselves, with other men that look like us, but also the ones who don't. When I first started this journey in getting my certification in life coaching, believe it or not, I was the only black male within my course and taking the classes. And so that said, I would have these coaching conversations and with other men in the course, and they were not of color. They were white men, and so they were. When I was talking about what I wanted to do with my coaching license, they all came to me and said, look, man, like we have these same issues as well. Like this is not just a men of color thing. This is men in general. And so that's why I always, I call it the brother to brother show. And I also talk about make sure that this is something that all men have conversation around, but particularly men of color. And definitely pushed me in that direction. And so tomorrow's men, as I mentioned that earlier, as my company that I run, and it was geared after my mother's vision of young men at the time. She was a civil rights kid, and so because she was a civil rights kid, they were a lot of advocates. They advocated a lot for Black people in the 50s and the 60s, and so therefore, I saw a lot of that. I heard a lot of that, and so those teachings were taught to the young men that she taught. And so she actually called the program Tomorrow's Men. And that program did wonders, and also had, I was able to get, bigger brothers out of that program. And so she did a lot about, self-awareness, teaching those men how to be self-aware, to understand who they are, where they came from. And a lot of those men, reached back out to me, and we had those conversations even to this day. And so, one of the reasons why we're here today is to talk about the health. And a lot of people know that story, but they also don't know that my mother suffered from diabetes. And so, with that, I saw a lot. I saw a lot of health issues. She had a stroke when I was at the age of 6. I witnessed my mom having a stroke, and so it paralyzed her whole left side, and it did a lot for me. Right, I saw someone who was very determined, who pushed through a lot of different things. And so she drew that. I think she drew her energy from me, and I drew my energy from her as I got older and understood while she was here. And so that then kind of pushed me to understand life a little bit more. That then pushed me to persevere and to have some level of grit to push through this thing called life. And so that's the story I like to tell. And it's not something that I share all the time, but it's something that I want to share to anybody that is going through the same type of things. And that's why that was my aha moment to understand a little bit more about health, because as Blacks, we do have things within our lives that are hereditary, that go on and go into our children. And so how do we go about helping and supporting each other through these tough times? And so what about you, JCam? I know you've had some things within your life, and you've had
For sure.
family
For
members
sure.
that,
Yeah. When I
but what about you?
Yeah, I mean, when I was going through adolescence, my mother had a nervous breakdown and was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. So mental health for me before it became popular was something that I was very focused on, understanding, being aware of how you get to that point. And so, that's so important. I was just talking to a young brother. He was in my yoga practice, and he's 32 years old. And I was just telling how none of the OGs talked to me or any of my friends about like prostate health, like getting checkups and things like that, and making sure that you're on top of that early. We're going through something as Black men right now where some of us are falling by the wayside with our health. We're eating horrible. We're not working out. Our mental health is, we're feeling the squeeze of society, and we need these outlets like yoga and meditation and working out to really kind of manage all of that. And that's something that's so important to me. And so I try to make sure that I, imprint that on people every day. I had a young brother this morning who came to yoga, and he's on the fast track in the marketing space, and just really didn't understand how much he needed it. And his first time doing yoga was me 6 months ago. Now he's a full blown yogi. He does yoga 4 times a week. And I think that that's just so amazing. So it's really important for brothers like us to understand, we have to communicate and be vulnerable and be transparent with the younger generation about, what health really looks like, cutting back on the brown liquor, cutting back on the marijuana, cutting back on the sugar, more importantly, is so important. People don't know, but they are addicted to sugar. And so I just think it's important. I was also talking to a young lady earlier about, why I'm intermittent fasting. So I don't eat until 12 o'clock. And I just really want to be able to fine tune my discipline and fine tune the way I consume food and make
Mm-hmm.
sure that I'm consuming healthier and cleaner food, because I really want to get to 94, 95 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So all of those things, all of those elements are really important, but more importantly, important for us to share and press upon younger people and particularly younger Black men.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You said something that was so powerful, man. You said that you were young and your mom went through a nervous breakdown. Be honest with you, bro. I've never said this out loud, but that's one thing we share. My mom went through
Mm-hmm.
you know, a nervous breakdown herself. She went through a time where we had a really tough time because she was my only parent, and
Mm-hmm. Same.
one of the reasons why I'm even here today and even doing the work that I do, and to try to like coach and talk about those things, because you can easily slip into that. Um,
Easy.
and, and at that time, bro, when I was younger, I didn't even know it was depression. I didn't even know what
Nope.
depression was, because in the Black community, we didn't talk about those things. Somebody goes crazy. And so now there's something
Right.
to, I don't want to say necessarily label that, but it is what it is. And so
Mm-hmm.
I try to make sure that educating others, understanding, listening, but also bringing awareness and talking about it all the time is so important. And a lot of us don't speak about it.
For
We,
sure.
we can actually see some of our friends going down that path and
Yep.
slipping into that depression, and
Yep.
they don't even know it. And we've had our conversations offline about that. I'm like,
Yep.
well, they may be slipping into it and they don't know it. Like, we got to
Yeah.
uplift them. We got to make sure that, hey, um, call him back,
Yep.
did you reach out to him? And that's something that we don't do enough of. We just
For
kind of let
sure.
people be.
Yeah, I mean, I think, man, like some of the more important things of understanding is like we think that we can oversex our issues. We think we can
Mm,
out drink our issues. We think
right.
we can out smoke our issues.
Hmm.
And a lot of our physical ailments come from the mental stress that
Hmm.
is on us. So every young person that comes across my path, I immediately say, hey man, you got to get it. You got to get in therapy, man.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
immediately, and their response is usually, oh well, I'm good, I'm in a good space. And I said
Yeah.
that's the perfect time to be
Yes.
in therapy, because you really don't want to be looking for a therapist while
Hmm.
you're going through a crisis. A
Right.
lot of our physical things are manifested through our mental faculties, and a lack of management and outlets for those things. And we have to really understand that about ourselves. And you talked about awareness earlier.
Hmm.
Being self-awareness comes at a premium with people, particularly people of color. So, those are some important caveats that, I got to drop and leave with young people.
Yeah. So what about like, black men in health? What did you see growing up? My brother and I talked about our father, so that was a common thing. But
Hmm.
black men, that's in general, I even think in my own space, not a lot of working out. They do a lot of
Hmm.
excuses with work and kids.
Yep.
But I see, and I'm like, well, you could do 15 minutes, you could do 30 minutes. It doesn't have to be an hour every day. I mean, even remember earlier today, man, I didn't feel like my legs were hurting, my knees were hurting, everything. But I said I
Hmm.
need to do something. And so to make sure that I just release that level of stress, it doesn't
For
completely
sure.
take away all the stress, but it allows you physically and mentally to release and take some time for yourself. And I think
Absolutely.
that's more so than anything, you having time to yourself to make sure
Hmm.
that you are doing something that is going to build muscle, endurance,
Hmm.
and then it does a lot for your mental as well. What about
and,
you?
and release those endorphins. I mean, I grew up on the south side of Chicago in Inglewood, which is one of the, most challenged neighborhoods in the nation. We were in a food desert before I knew what a food desert was.
Mm.
So, there was nothing but unhealthy eating,
Hmm.
and there was absolutely no one around me who was working out on a regular basis. What
Right.
was that? And so when we were kids, we would, ride our bikes and play basketball and things like that. So that was kind of our outlet and what kept us busy. But as adults, you saw this at FAMU when we start,
Hmm.
but when we graduated, we didn't have any idea on what was coming
Hmm.
down the pipeline from a health perspective when we
Right.
turned 25, 30,
Hmm.
35, and
Hmm.
now
Hmm.
40. And so, we had to almost re-engineer and rewire
Hmm.
our bodies and our understandings on the food we take in, how we push our bodies to the limits. And
Hmm.
something that we don't talk about at all is sleep, brother.
Yeah.
We most people aren't getting the right
Enough
amount of
sleep.
sleep so your
Yeah.
body can repair. And as
Hmm.
you know, better than anybody else, like if you're working out to stay in shape or lose weight, that repair is
Hmm.
one of the most important things. So those are things that we did not get taught, that we did not see growing up, but that we had to teach ourselves. And we're
Hmm.
learning on the fly, even
Right.
still at
Right.
41. It's kind of
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I can think about times where, we were just happy just to have a good meal. We were just happy to have
Yeah.
fellowship and be around each other. And
Yep.
that was one thing. And now I think for some reason we were talking about mentorship the other day, my brother and I, and we were like somewhere along that lines, especially we got mentors growing up, the mentorship has stopped. And so
Yeah.
I don't even think the young kids even want to hear the OGs or hear the older guys talk about certain things for whatever reason, or they can't hear it, right? They can't hear it
Yeah.
because there's so many other stuff out there and there's too many things to kind of listen to.
Yeah,
So to
and
hear us,
there are a lot of distractions, but we've allowed those distractions, particularly social media, to raise our youth.
right.
That's the first thing. The second thing is the OGs are no longer teaching the youngins. And I don't think that it's the cart before the horse. I think that the OGs are not interested. The OGs aren't
Hmm.
uh, equipped with the emotional maturity to
That's
reach
true.
these young people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what all we know is aggression, aggression, aggression.
Mm-hmm.
Get your mess together, get yourself together, pull
Mm-hmm.
yourself out by your bootstraps. Nah, take that. You know, all the things that you talked about earlier. But for real, we have to reprogram ourselves on how we communicate with these young brothers, and we got to meet them where they are. You
Right.
know, because they are not going to listen, and they are the generation that needs the most
Mm-hmm.
coaching, the most mentorship, because they're fired up and they're ready to go and they got all the resources and the information at their fingertips, but they don't know how to properly activate it.
Mm-hmm.
So I really want to impress upon anybody that's older to learn how to meet these young people where they are and bring them through the door with you. And if you don't, we're going to have a whole generation lost, being taught by social media,
Mm-hmm.
thinking the things that they see on social media
Is
is
real.
reality, and
Right.
it's
Right.
just not. It's just not.
Right. And so we talked about the health piece, but what about the mental aspect of it? You know, again,
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the reasons why I even like wanted to get into this, because even in my relationships, I talk about like you can easily be on a hiatus and then go right into the depression.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just say it. My mom lost her job the same year she got Teacher of the Year.
Mm.
I'll say it again. She lost her job the same year she got Teacher of the Year, and so uh, the depression that came after that and the
Yep.
things that I saw as a young man um, was a lot.
Yeah.
And it wasn't her fault. I don't blame her, but I
Yeah.
also understand like she didn't have anybody. Like there was no I'm talking to someone to get help.
No.
There was
No.
no especially because all of her peers were coming
Mm-hmm.
from the same generation and they didn't know how to like
Yep.
have a conversation
Nope.
around what you do. And so all it was prayer. And I'm not saying that
Mm-hmm.
prayer doesn't help, but there's mental health as we've gotten older and we understand
Yeah.
that it has to be a balance between the two. There has to be a balance
Absolutely.
between a spiritual aspect of it, and also another logic and understanding about your
Mm-hmm.
body and
And
how you
self-aware.
yeah,
So
self-awareness. Yeah.
I always so part of one of the mantras that I speak to in my yoga practice is that I've had the privilege to do yoga and administer yoga all over the world, 40 different countries, 60
Hmm.
cities. And I meet these people, a lot of religious folks, and they tell
Hmm.
me all the time, they say, well, I already pray every day, why do I need to meditate? Like, what's the difference?
Right.
And my response is the same every time. Prayer is speaking to the God above you, and meditation is speaking to the God within you.
Mm.
And so that you have to
Right.
have a great
That's
balance of
true.
the two. You know what I'm saying? And so, that's really important. And that's something that our parents weren't taught,
Right.
that balance, that self-awareness, that
Mhm.
understanding that you can fix most of your issues
Mhm.
internally. There's
Right.
some people that have chemical imbalances, and I
Mhm.
understand
Mhm.
that. But for the most part, when it comes to depression, when it comes to leaning on other people to make you happy, when it comes to how you feel about yourself,
Mhm.
how you treat others, 95% of the things that we go through from a mental health standpoint, we can fix ourselves. I have two books that I recommend people read, by Young Pueblo. One is Clarity and Connection, and his new one, Lighter. And he really talks about how he was in a spiral when he was younger, and he almost died. And I know so many young people are going through those type of things. So I recommend everybody read those two books, and that will give you a lot of enlightenment on how to really work in. We work out a lot, but very few of us actually work in.
Right. Right. And I also feel like a lot of things that happen to us, we cause on ourselves.
Absolutely,
We don't
absolutely, one hundred
we
percent.
bring whatever you allow in, you take in. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think a lot of times, if you don't allow certain people in your space, you don't allow certain things within your your your
Your
core,
universe.
yeah, your universe, then it wouldn't allow you to be as sick as you are. If that's
Absolutely.
relationships with a woman, relationships
Mm-hmm.
at work, I don't
Mm-hmm.
allow myself to go into situations where I feel like it's going to bring me down. I try to make sure
Yeah,
I connect with healthy people. I connect with
absolutely,
people who are positive. Doesn't mean that we don't have bad times, but
for
if
sure.
we if it's not people who aren't talking about what can we do to make this better, you
Right.
know, everybody's going to have a bad day. But if you're constantly always in a bad space, then there's something that
Yeah,
you need to do so we can get out of that space. And so I try not
absolutely.
to surround. I try to surround myself with iron, as we always know, right? You have to
Just
surround
as a
yourself.
Yep, just as an artist or a curator curates an art gallery,
Mhm,
you have to curate the right people around you.
mhm,
You cannot allow people just because of proximity and longevity to be
right.
around you just
Mhm,
because that's your cousin or that's your blood. Well, I've
mhm,
known him since we was Pampers. Like, I'm
mhm.
loyal. You cannot allow bad energy around you. You have to immediately cut that cancer out. And I'm not saying you need to forget about those people, but if they're not serving you, you have to
Absolutely.
get rid of those folks and
Absolutely.
really work on you. You can't continue to progress forward when you're carrying around baggage from 20
Mhm.
years of somebody who's just not serving you. So that's,
Right.
that's really important to kind of understand as you're navigating this universe and navigating life.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot, and like you said before, the biggest thing that hurts us most is social media.
Hmm.
We don't use it to the best of our ability. It brings us down. There are a lot of enlightening things and strong highlights within social media, but a lot of it, I think, is hurting us because we're living on likes instead of
Yep.
like you said, within ourselves.
Yeah.
Other people other people should not validate who you are.
Never.
And so I think in that healthy space, when you get there, and I think we've all been there, but I think once you mature and start really understanding who you are, you are allowed to be free. And I like to use that
Hmm.
word even when I'm speaking to people, when I'm coaching them, and I have a conversation with people who are going through certain things. Understand it feels good to be free. And what I mean by
Hmm.
that is this: you don't care about what other people feel about you.
No.
That's free. you know because when you're not free, that means that those people can bring you down. They have a shackle to you. It's almost a slave within those things. And
Hmm.
I try to make sure, and I've talked to people about, like, hey, allow yourself to be free. You don't have to be connected to social media and this
Yeah.
and the craziness, so that you can be who you really are. And so understand that doesn't mean you can't be better, but
Yep.
you have to be vulnerable, you have to be open,
Yep.
so that we can all grow. And so
Transparency and vulnerability are power.
yeah.
If you're
So
looking at, if you're listening to this, like, just remember transparency and vulnerability of power. I don't know where we lost ourselves to think that being vulnerable and being transparent was was a weakness, and it's not.
mhm,
And it's very much so a power. So
yeah,
you have to activate that power and just be real with yourself and be real with others. That's really important.
absolutely. And so, to the men, is there anything you want to share with the men, or just give them something before you leave, Cam, about what you
Sure.
do, or before we head out?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about the evolution, but we skipped over a lot about me. I think my 20s was just filled with trying to figure out who I was and what type of person I really wanted to be. And I
Mhm,
clashed a lot with so many different people, but I realized that I was, most of the things that had happened to me, all the things that
mhm,
had happened to me was because of my own doing.
mhm,
And, once I took full accountability for that, then the world just opened up for me. And that was so important, and just the way that I was even exposed to yoga was crazy, man. I mean, I had hurt my back playing basketball because I used to play ball 4 times a week. And then, I was taking a cycle class, and the cycle class had gotten canceled. So I was looking for something to supplement the
mhm,
cycle class. And so I was kind of watching the OGs go in there and set up for yoga. And
mhm,
one of them came behind me and was like, "Man, you should come try yoga." And I was like, on my toxic stuff, like, "Man, I'm
yeah,
from Inglewood. I'm from
right,
the
right.
South Side of Chicago. I don't do no yoga." And he was kind of like, "Well, let your back hurt then." I was like, "Dang, man, he got a point." And I immediately exposed myself to something that would completely change my life. And 10 years later, now I've been able to monetize that. I've gotten certified to be a life coach, certified to teach yoga, and it's changing the lives of the young people around me. And they're starting yoga programs at their
Mhm,
schools, in college, and they're connecting me with basketball teams and these different programs where I can monetize that. Amazon, Google, Allstate. I just did a yoga program for Allstate. So my caveat or my key takeaway is continue to expose yourself to different things. Continue to expose yourself to things that serve you and serve the purpose of who you want to be. And I think if you do that, you will undoubtedly come out on top, whether it's your physical health, your mental health, the way you consume information, the way you project love and light and transparency to the world.
Absolutely, man. Thanks so much. Thanks, Cam, for being on tonight, and
Thank you for having me, brother.
Really giving a lot of insight of what you do. I know we talk a lot about what we do offline, but to bring this more awareness to our men out there, we want to continue to do that. So thanks again for being on. And to my viewers and listeners who are listening to this, thanks so much to listen to the Brother to Brother show. Men in health, please make sure that you're going to get your checkups. You're going to do your mental health strategies that you might be doing. I don't do yoga all the time. I need to. But every time I talk to Cam, he's like, when's the last time you go into a yoga class? And so I'm going to try one soon. But I'm also going to make sure that I continue to do the things that I need to do to empower other people so that we can be a healthy set of men out here. So we have more health within our communities. We're able to sharpen them and bring more light to our next generation. So thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you, listeners and viewers, for coming onto the show. You can find us at tomorrowsmen.com, on Facebook at Tomorrow's Men, and on Instagram at Tomorrow's Men. Please click and subscribe to the button below. I'm your host, Kmo. Until we meet again, know we love you, work with us, be with us, and know we're coming from the heart. Peace.